Bryce Elser from USA Swimming asked me to talk open water, and so I thought, well, that's great. I can talk about open water for hours. But my topic today is Haley Anderson and Ous Mellouli and their path to London. So I'm really thankful to be here. I have a lot of people to thank. I for sure would not be here if it weren't for coaches along the way. And my background actually in open water, somebody asked me today, they said, did you ever do any open water? And I'm like, nope. A couple triathlons here and there. But no, in 2005, I was actually coaching a club team in Eastern North Carolina, the Carteret Currents. And I got to work with a great athlete in Chip Peterson. And that summer of 2005, Montreal were the World Championships, and it was about the same time where people were thinking, like, you can't do pool and open water. So a lot of coaches maybe weren't sending their kids to go do a World Championship event because they were afraid it was going to affect their performance in the pool. And so he qualified for Worlds, and it was my first staff, and I mean, I was so excited and nervous, and I was really fortunate to be part of a great staff. I learned a lot from Rick Walker and Denny Ryther, Sid Cassidy and Paul Asmuth, and I just asked a lot of questions, and I observed a lot. And at that World Championship, Chip was actually the silver medalist in the 5K, and then he was the world champion in the 10K. And 2 weeks later, we went back to Irvine for nationals, and he won the mile in the pool. So, you know, that was kind of fun for us. And it definitely, like, I was so passionate about open water coming back from that. And really, that's kind of where I got my start. And from there, I was lucky to be able to work at my alma mater in Chapel Hill. And Coach Frank Comfort hired me, and Rich DeSelm, I got to work with him, and right now I'm an assistant at the University of Southern California. And I work with Dave Salo, and most recently our volunteer assistant, John Urbanchek. So that's really fun to have John on deck with us. And thanks to Dave and Trojan Swim Club, I have been fortunate to get to know some of Trojan Swim Club and work with some really great athletes. So I feel lucky about that. You know, today I will tell you a little bit. I don't have all the answers. I don't know. I'm going to share some stories and show you some pictures about kind of from 2005 and through 2013, but really focus on 2012 as far as Ous and Haley and their development, their backgrounds primarily being in the pool, and then kind of transitioning into being able to be pretty good open water swimmers with not a lot of open water training. And hopefully maybe you have an idea about open water, or you just at least generate conversation about it, and I think that's great for the sport, and that's what we need. So one of the things I love about open water is that it's a really tight-knit community, and it's a family. And when you're on a national team, you have about 4 to 8 athletes. And so as a coach, you really get to know the kids, you get to know them as individuals, you get to know their skill set, what they enjoy. And I think my role as a national team coach when I'm there is to figure out how the athlete is going to process information. And so how can I best relate to them? And I know a lot of the talks here have been about relationships with kids, and I do feel like that's really important. And especially in open water, you do spend a lot of time with your athletes. And so, you know, people will get out of an open water race, and a 5K is about an hour, a 10K is about 2 hours, and a 25K is like 6 hours. So there's a lot of time for coaches to do some talking, but there's a lot of stories that kids leave those races with, and even the finish, the last 10 meters, lots of different things can happen, and it can involve 5 different people, and they all have a different story. And so that's one of the things I do love about it. I don't have a chart for yardage or a guideline, cycles, anything like that. You know, Dave and I have really worked pretty well together, I feel, as far as making sure that we're on the same page, and I guess the main thing that I have learned is that I've gotten to work with 3 world champions. Chip being a 16-year-old male, Haley was 21, and then Ous is 28. And so I had to learn how to adapt to their needs and the style that they needed, because they're not all the same. And I don't think that you can just throw these kids in there and tell them all to do one thing one way. Because like I said, open water is really diverse, and it's a challenging sport. So yeah, I don't know, maybe you don't know who Haley Anderson is. So I wanted to highlight some of her accomplishments. She won most notably she was a 10K silver medalist, and this summer she was a 5K world champion in Barcelona. She's been really successful on the college stage, and I put some of her times up there just so you can see. She didn't come into college as a 4:34 500 freestyler, but I think she was about 4:40, and her mile might have been 16:30, and so she was able to progress over 4 years, win the NC2A championship in the mile, the 500 freestyle, and I don't feel like we sacrificed anything in the pool to be able to be successful in open water. So the funny thing about Haley is she's the kind of person, she's a middle child, so she definitely has middle child syndrome. Like, she always feels like she has the raw end of the deal. Like, she's mad if I don't get her times. She'll say, I want to mix up my events at the next dual meet. And so Dave and I will put her in like 200 fly, 400 IM. And then the day of the meet, she's like, well, why am I not in the mile and in the 400 freestyle relay? It's like, okay, Haley. So it's good, because I feel like her characteristics it's good. I think it helps her in open water. And then I don't think she came to USC necessarily for open water or anything. I think she just wanted to help us build the program. And I highlight 2010 because that was her year of fourths, and kind of her interest in open water. She was invited to a national team open water camp, select camp with USA Swimming, and it's a great camp. Rick Walker runs it, and if you have a chance to go with your club kids or as a coach, you will learn a lot, and I think it's just a great start to get into open water. So she did the camp, and that was her first. It culminated in a 10K, and that was actually the trials for the World Championships that summer in Canada. So she places fourth, and that qualified her for the 25K. She's like, do I really want to go to the 25K? But we talked a lot about it, and she wanted to have the opportunity to represent the U.S. at a World Championship. And so she goes 25K, just under 6 hours, gets fourth place, and comes back. She had qualified for Pan Pacs in the pool, swam the 800 freestyle. She was fourth place there. I forgot to mention she was fourth in NC2As in the mile that year in March. And then she goes to do the 10K for open water Pan Pacs, and that's in Long Beach. And it was only her second 10K ever. So she gets out of the water, and it's kind of crazy. You don't really know what place you finish. It's always a real tight finish. And so she comes out, and she says, what place did I get? I was like, it's great, your second 10K and you got fourth. And then she like burst into tears. I was like, oh, okay. Like my worst moment in coaching ever. I absolutely said the wrong thing. But I think that it drove her to want to be successful in 2011. So, and then a lot of you guys know Ous Mellouli. He is one of the most decorated distance swimmers of all time. Another USC graduate, like 10 years ago. He was the first to ever medal back-to-back. Well, actually, the first to ever medal in the pool and open water. So in London, he won the bronze medal in the mile, gold medal in the 10K. He's somebody that's really versatile. He can train IM, backstroke, butterfly, anything you throw at him, he's going to do it. And he has been based in LA, but I think one thing that's kept him in the sport for a long time is the ability to go do a training camp with Coach Rose in Mission Viejo for 3 weeks, or go to Colorado Springs. And in 2012, he joined the Danish team for a little bit, and because I guess part of the reason I was able to go with him to London, we knew Dave was going to be the coach for the U.S. team, and so that kind of opened the door. Ous had been talking about doing open water, so it kind of made sense for me to go with him. So At that point, we kind of had to get a plan going for what he was going to do. And one thing I think is really important when dealing with athletes, that either you're taking them to the next level or just an introduction to open water, is to just know your athlete. And the more information that you have, I think the more you can help them be successful. I really would highlight like building upon the past. And you know, for both Haley and Ous, they were relative newcomers to open water, so I had to make sure I didn't throw a lot of things at them. I tried to keep kind of filter through what information they had, and again, like maybe they're interested in open water is a little bit different. Ous wants to win a gold medal, you know, and then because Haley had some opportunities, she wanted to win a gold medal too. And communication is huge, especially in open water. So many things can happen, so many things can change, and I think trusting in the coach and trusting your athlete. A lot of these races, kids are making a decision in the middle of the race, and they have to make a decision in a split second. And it's like, you're not giving them hand signals or telling them what to do. You've really got to coach them to understand, to trust themselves, to make the right decision. And I mean, and that can determine the finish of a race sometimes. It's a balancing act in regards to Ous, who's balancing the pool thing. He's 28, so he has injuries that he's dealing with, and you know, trying to make sure that we communicate with his trainers and what he can do and what he can't do. And for Haley, it was like, you know, she has NC2As in March. Our U.S. trials were in April. The Portugal qualifying race was in June. So there's just a lot of different things going on. She doesn't want to miss too much school, you know, or social life, all those things. So I felt like I needed to continue to remind myself that they're balancing a lot of other things, and it's not just they walk into the pool and yes, I have them for 2 hours, you know, but there are a lot of other things that could be going on. And then, you know, my point about goals here is like it had to be their goals. It's just because I wanted them to do well, that doesn't mean anything. It has to come from them. And since they both are pool swimmers, I try to break it down into a 3-step process. And you know, working backwards, you know, the ultimate goal is London, but before that, they both had to qualify in Portugal. And before that, you know, Haley obviously had to get through U.S. trials first. And Ous, I just felt like he needed to have a race before Cancun, or before Portugal. And I knew Cancun was a great stop on the World Cup circuit. He had never done a 10K before, and so it's a tropical location, it's warm weather, he's from North Africa, just not throw him into London, cold water. So that's kind of why we picked Cancun. And it worked out because U.S. trials in Cancun were about exactly the same time. So I've got a couple pictures here. This was, it doesn't look as pretty on screen as it does on my computer, but so this is the start of the Cancun race. And you know, when you go to an open water event, it's a little different than a pool. So it's not like just showing up and you have a timeline and you have an assigned heat and lane, you're putting on wristbands, you're getting numbers, all sorts of things. And I just wanted him to experience something that he needed to know what it was like. There's a timeline. Basically everything I told him to do, he didn't do in that first race. He led for 9 kilometers of the race, and everybody just passed him in the last K. And I was kind of waiting to see his reaction, because I'm like, if he really hates this, then you know, this is not going to be fun. But he had a huge smile when he got out, and all the other guys were like, oh, telling him what he did wrong and what he did right, and so all sorts of things like that. So it was good. I felt like he had finally decided that he was going to buy in to open water and really feel as passionate about it as I was.